She kicked down the flimsy apartment door, blaster raised, and froze. The high-value target wasn't a heavily armed soldier or a political rebel. It was a scrawny teen boy, terror in his eyes as he pressed against the far wall. Mira's finger hovered over the trigger. This made no sense. Had the dossier been wrong? Was this child her quarry or merely collateral damage? Before she could decide, an invisible sledgehammer slammed into her chest. Gasping, Mira flew backward, crashing against the hallway wall. Shock became rage. She tried to raise her blaster, but her arm wouldn't obey. Her muscles strained under telekinetic bonds, pinning her in place. The boy rose, eyes glowing electric blue. Otherworldly power radiated from his slight frame. Mira felt her mind invaded by an alien presence, ancient and vast. In that moment, she knew her mission had gone terribly awry. Pride forgotten, the hardened mercenary forced words through gritted teeth. Please, mercy. It galled her to beg, but this was no mere child. His psychic might dwarfed anything she'd seen. If he wished, he could crush her mind like an insect. Wariness crossed the boy's face. The pressure eased. Mira slid to the floor, trembling and ashamed. She looked up at him, realizing their fates were now entwined. This child wielded unimaginable power. If turned to evil ends, he could bring ruin to the galaxy. Mira made a choice. Abandoning her contract, she vowed to guide him, to unlock his potential for good. But she knew others would come. Governments, crime syndicates, rogue scientists, all seeking to claim Earth's psychic prodigy for themselves. An unlikely alliance. An assassin and her target, bound together, determined to survive in a hostile universe. The future hung in the balance as a new path took shape before them. A path that would redefine the destiny of worlds. Mira's ship, the Nighthawk, hummed with restless energy as it carved through the void of space. In the cramped confines of the vessel, an unlikely pair forged an uneasy alliance. Mira, the battle-hardened mercenary, found herself in the role of mentor to Patrick, the scrawny teenager who wielded unimaginable psychic power. Patrick sat cross-legged on the cold metal floor, his brow furrowed in concentration. Mira watched him intently, her eyes tracing the lines of strain on his youthful face. She understood the weight that now rested upon his narrow shoulders, the burden of a power he never asked for. "Focus," Mira instructed, her voice firm but not unkind. "Control your thoughts. Don't let them control you." Patrick's eyes snapped open, frustration etched in their electric blue depths. "I'm trying," he said through gritted teeth, "but it's like trying to hold back a tsunami with my bare hands." Mira nodded, remembering her own grueling training. "It takes time," she said, "and discipline. You have to—" The ship lurched violently, throwing them both off balance. Alarms blared as the Nighthawk's sensors detected an incoming threat. Mira leaped to her feet, racing to the cockpit. Her fingers flew over the controls, bringing up a holographic display of their surroundings. "Shit," she hissed. A sleek, predatory craft was closing in fast, its weapons hot. Mira recognized the signature design, a ship used by the elite operatives of Project Prometheus. Patrick stumbled into the cockpit, his face pale. "What's happening?" "We've got company," Mira said grimly. "Strap in. This is going to get rough." She threw the Nighthawk into a dizzying, evasive pattern, desperately trying to shake their pursuer. But the Prometheus ship matched her move for move, relentless in its pursuit. A deep, metallic voice crackled over the comm system. "Surrender the boy, and I'll consider letting you live." Mira's eyes narrowed. She recognized that voice, Zane Corso, a man with a reputation as cold and unforgiving as the void of space itself. "Go to hell," Mira spat back. A dark chuckle filled the cockpit. "Have it your way." The Prometheus ship opened fire, lances of searing energy slashing through the darkness. Mira gritted her teeth, pouring all her skill into keeping the Nighthawk intact. But Corso was relentless, hammering at her defenses with ruthless precision. Just as Mira thought their luck had run out, Patrick rose from his seat. His eyes blazed with that unearthly blue light, his face set in a mask of commitment. He extended a hand, his slender fingers splayed toward their attacker. The Prometheus ship shuddered, its engines sputtering as if gripped by an invisible force. Corso's voice crackled over the comm, permeated with static and confusion. Mira watched in awe as the enemy vessel was wrenched violently off course, sent careening into the depths of space. Patrick slumped back into his seat, his face ashen. Mira eased off the controls, letting out a shaky breath. They had survived, for now, but she knew their troubles were not nearly finished. As the Nighthawk limped through the stars, Mira intercepted a coded transmission that turned her blood to ice. Emperor Valkorion had placed a bounty on Patrick's head, branding him a threat to the entire galaxy. And beneath it all, an undercurrent of something even more sinister. Whispers of an ancient prophecy, a child of two worlds, and a power that could reshape the very fabric of the universe. Mira looked at Patrick, seeing the weight of destiny settling upon his young shoulders. She knew then that her path was clear. She would protect this boy, guide him, forge him into the weapon he was meant to be. Together they would unravel the secrets of his past and confront the gathering darkness that sought to claim him. The Nighthawk pushed onward, carrying its unlikely crew into an uncertain future, a future that held the promise of revelation and the specter of unimaginable danger. The Nighthawk's engines whined as Mira guided the battered ship through Xandar 7's turbulent atmosphere. Rust-colored clouds parted, revealing a desolate landscape of jagged rock formations and windswept plains. Patrick stared out the viewport, his face a mask of drive. "We're here," Mira announced, her voice tight. "The Prothean ruins should be just beyond that ridge." As they touched down, a lithe figure emerged from the ship's cramped living quarters. Lyra, their newfound ally, adjusted her envirosuit's seals. "I've analyzed the sensor data. The ruins emit strange energy patterns. We should proceed with caution." The trio disembarked, boots crunching on loose gravel. Wind howled across the barren plain, carrying stinging particles of dust. They trudged towards a looming cliff face, its surface etched with weathered glyphs. "There," Patrick said, pointing to a narrow fissure. "I can feel something calling to me." They squeezed through the opening, emerging into a vast chamber. Crumbling pillars supported a vaulted ceiling, ghostly holograms flickering to life as they passed. Mira's hand never left her blaster, eyes scanning for threats. A distant explosion rocked the chamber. Dust and debris rained down as armored figures swarmed through a breach in the far wall. Blaster fire erupted, filling the air with deadly energy bolts. "Krenim Commandos!" Lyra shouted, diving for cover. Mira returned fire, her shots finding gaps in the attacker's armor. Patrick reached out with his mind, hurling chunks of fallen masonry at the oncoming soldiers. His face contorted with the effort, sweat beading on his brow. A towering figure strode through the chaos, black armor gleaming. "Inquisitor Kex!" Mira spat, recognizing the Krenim leader. Kex's voice boomed across the chamber. "Surrender the boy, and your deaths will be quick." Patrick's eyes blazed electric blue. With a gesture, he tore a pillar from its moorings, sending it crashing into the Krenim ranks. Mira used the distraction to advance, her blaster spitting death. Just as the tide seemed to turn, a familiar voice cut through the din. "Well, well, quite a party you've got here." Zane Corso materialized from the shadows, his stealth field dissipating. Mira's blood ran cold. How had he found them? To her shock, Corso raised his weapon and opened fire on the Krenim. "We need to talk," he shouted over the carnage. "But first, let's deal with our mutual problem." With Corso's unexpected aid, they fought their way deeper into the ruins. Lyra worked feverishly to unlock ancient security systems, buying them precious time. Patrick's powers grew with each passing moment, fueled by the latent energy of the Prothean site. They stumbled into a circular chamber, its walls covered in pulsing circuitry. At its center stood a crystalline obelisk, the conduit. Patrick approached, drawn by an inexorable force. "Wait," Mira called, but it was too late. Patrick's hand touched the artifact. His body went rigid, eyes wide and unseeing. Images flooded his mind, civilizations rising and falling, a galaxy in flames, and at the center of it all, himself. The chamber shuddered. Prothean war mechs lumbered to life, identifying the group as intruders. Mira and Corso engaged the ancient machines in a desperate battle, while Lyra frantically worked to decipher the conduit's inscriptions. "It's not a weapon," Patrick gasped, emerging from his trance. "It's a key." Before anyone could react, he interfaced with the artifact once more. A pulse of energy exploded outward, rippling across the stars. The conduit crumbled to dust. Exhausted and battered, they fought their way back to the surface. But their ordeal was a long way to go. Inquisitor Kex and her remaining forces had regrouped, cutting off their escape. The standoff was broken by the thunderous arrival of a massive starship. It descended from the clouds, dwarfing even the Cranum vessels. A voice crackled over their comms. "This is Admiral Thalia Vex of the Zethrian Empire. Stand down immediately." Lyra's eyes widened in shock. "Mother?" As the Zethrian ship's weapons locked onto the Cranum forces, Mira realized their journey had taken an unexpected turn. The galaxy was changing, awakened by the power Patrick had unleashed, and they were at the center of the storm. The massive Zethrian ship loomed over the battlefield, its weapons trained on the Cranium forces. Mira's grip tightened on her blaster as she assessed their precarious situation. "All combatants, stand down immediately," Admiral Thalia Vex's voice boomed across the comms. "This is your final warning." Inquisitor Kex snarled, her mandibles clicking in frustration. With a curt hand signal, she ordered her remaining troops to lower their weapons. Mira exchanged wary glances with Corso and Patrick as the tension hung thick in the air. A shimmering energy field enveloped their small group. Before anyone could react, they found themselves materializing in the Retribution's cavernous hangar bay. Lyra stumbled forward, her eyes wide with disbelief. "Mother?" she whispered, her voice trembling. Admiral Vex strode towards them, her silver uniform gleaming under the harsh lights. Her resemblance to Lyra was unmistakable, though her face bore the weathered lines of command. "We have much to discuss," Vex said, her tone brooking no argument. "Follow me." As they marched through the ship's sterile corridors, Mira's mind raced. She kept Patrick close, acutely aware of the curious glances from passing crew members. Corso fell into step beside her, his face an unreadable mask. "I don't like this," he muttered under his breath. "How did they find us?" Before Mira could respond, a violent tremor shook the ship. Alarms blared as the deck plates vibrated beneath their feet. Admiral Vex's comm unit crackled to life. "Multiple hostiles dropping out of hyperspace," a panicked voice reported. "It's the Emperor's fleet." Vex's expression hardened. "Battle stations, all hands prepare for combat." The group stumbled into the bridge as chaos erupted around them. Through the view screen, Mira watched in horror as a swarm of Crenum warships emerged from hyperspace, their weapons already charging. "Admiral," the tactical officer called out, "we're picking up a transmission from the lead vessel. It's Emperor Valkorion himself." A holographic projection flickered to life, revealing the imposing figure of the Crenum Emperor. His eyes locked onto Patrick, a predatory grin spreading across his face. "Your time to hide is over, boy," Valkorion sneered. "Surrender now, and I may yet show mercy to your companions." Patrick stepped forward, his fists clenched at his sides. "Never," he spat. Valkorion's laugh sent chills down Mira's spine. "Then you leave me no choice." The Emperor's flagship unleashed a barrage of energy weapons, hammering against the Retribution's shields. The bridge rocked violently as Zethrian gunners returned fire, their advanced weaponry tearing through several smaller Crenum vessels. "We can't hold them off forever," Admiral Vex shouted over the din of battle. "We need to make the jump to hyperspace." Lyra's fingers danced across the navigation console. "We don't have enough power for a sustained jump." Vex's eyes narrowed. "Then we'll have to risk it. Set course for the Zethrian homeworld." As the Retribution's engines roared to life, Valkorion's flagship unleashed a devastating ion blast. The ship lurched sickeningly, sparks erupting from consoles across the bridge. "Direct hit!" the engineering officer cried out. "Hyperdrive's destabilizing!" Patrick stumbled forward, his eyes blazing with that otherworldly blue light. He placed his hands on the ship's control interface, and Mira felt the air crackle with raw energy. "What is he doing?" Corso demanded, reaching for his weapon. Mira grabbed his arm. "Wait." Patrick's body trembled with effort as he poured his psychic energy into the ship's systems. The alarms fell silent, and the violent shaking subsided. For a moment, it seemed as if time itself had stopped. Then, with a bone-jarring lurch, the Retribution jumped to hyperspace. The starfield outside warped and stretched, carrying them away from Valkorian's grasp. As quickly as it began, it was over. Patrick collapsed to the deck, his face ashen. Mira rushed to his side, cradling his head in her lap. "Status report," Vex barked. Lyra's voice was grim as she analyzed the readouts. "Hyperdrive's completely fried. We've dropped out of hyperspace in an uncharted system. No signs of pursuit, but—" She trailed off, her eyes meeting her mother's. "But what?" Mira demanded. Admiral Vex's shoulders sagged. "We're stranded." As the implications of their situation sank in, Mira looked down at Patrick's unconscious form. She brushed a lock of hair from his forehead, her touch gentle despite the calluses on her hands. "What have you done?" she whispered, equal parts awe and fear in her voice. The Retribution drifted silently through the void, surrounded by unfamiliar stars. With Valkorian's forces no doubt regrouping for another assault, Mira knew their respite would be short-lived. They needed a plan, and fast. She met Corso's gaze across the bridge, a silent understanding passing between them. Whatever came next, they would face it together. For Patrick's sake, and for the destiny of the universe itself. The Retribution limped through space, its systems struggling to maintain cohesion after the desperate hyperspace jump. Admiral Vex barked orders as her crew worked feverishly to stabilize the ship's faltering power core. "We're approaching the coordinates," Lyra announced, her eyes fixed on the navigation display. Through the view screen, empty space suddenly shimmered and parted, revealing a verdant world shrouded in swirling clouds. A collective gasp rippled through the bridge as the legendary Zethrian homeworld materialized before them. Their awe was short-lived. Space itself seemed to tear open, a massive spatial anomaly erupting into existence. Swirling energies crackled and pulsed, threatening to engulf everything in its path. "By the stars," Corso breathed, his usual bravado faltering. "What is that thing?" Before anyone could respond, proximity alarms blared. A massive fleet dropped out of hyperspace behind them. Valkorian's armada, weapons already charging. "Evasive maneuvers!" Vex shouted, but it was too late. The Emperor's flagship unleashed a devastating barrage. The Retribution shuddered violently as its shields collapsed under the onslaught. Fires erupted across multiple decks, and the acrid smell of burning circuits filled the air. "We can't take another hit like that," Mira growled, unholstering her blaster. She locked eyes with Corso, a silent understanding passing between them. "We'll buy you time. Get Patrick and Lyra to an escape shuttle." Admiral Vex nodded grimly, leading the two younger crew members towards the evacuation bay. Mira and Corso sprinted to the weapons control station, fingers flying over the consoles as they directed the Retribution's remaining firepower against the Cranum fleet. In the shuttle bay, Patrick hesitated at the airlock. "We can't just leave them," he protested, his eyes flickering with that eerie blue light. "We have no choice," Lyra said, her voice thick with emotion as she pulled him into the shuttle. As the small craft detached from the dying Retribution, Patrick pressed his hand against the viewport. He watched helplessly as Mira and Corso's desperate counterattack gave them the opening they needed to break free of the battle. "The anomaly," Lyra said suddenly, her eyes widening as she studied the shuttle's sensors. "It's not just a spatial rift, it's a wormhole, and it's our only chance." Patrick's mind raced, pieces falling into place. The Zethrians. They must have been experimenting with black hole technology for faster-than-light travel. As they hurtled towards the swirling vortex, Lyra's comm unit crackled to life. A heavily encrypted transmission filtered through, its contents causing the color to drain from her face. "What is it?" Patrick demanded. It's It's a lie, Lyra whispered, her voice barely audible over the shuttle's straining engines. The planet, it was just a decoy. The real Zethrian homeworld. It's on the other side of the wormhole. Patrick's heart sank as the implications hit him. There would be no going back, no rescue for Mira and Corso. They were truly on their own now. The shuttle plunged into the wormhole's maw, reality twisting and contorting around them. For what felt like an eternity, they tumbled through a kaleidoscope of impossible colors and geometries. Then, abruptly, they emerged. Before them stretched a vista beyond imagination, a colossal Dyson sphere encompassing an entire star system. Its surface gleamed with the light of a captive sun, dotted with sprawling cities and verdant landscapes. A fleet of sleek, otherworldly vessels approached, their designs unlike anything Patrick had ever seen. As they drew near, a transmission cut through the silence. Unidentified shuttle, this is the Zethrian Defense Force. You have entered restricted space. Prepare to be boarded. Patrick and Lyra exchanged a look of trepidation and wonder. Their journey had only just begun.
You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.